Ships or Shipsy? Only you can decide. Find out more at shipzorz.com. Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I hope you had an amazing long weekend. My long weekend was full of family. I did some work, got to recharge a little bit, and I think we can say the same for Audrey once she comes in. But first, I want to let you know what's happening on Let's Talk Supply Chain this week. So yesterday's episode, of course, is the first Monday of the month. So we had another Woman in Supply Chain episode, and Genty, she was on the show. Let me just share my screen so that you can see what I am talking about. So it's episode 137, Woman in Supply Chain. Genty started her life and career in India, and then she moved to California and spent several years in government, working in procurement for the government. And now she works in procurement for the San Francisco 49ers. And you're not going to want to miss this one. She is very inspirational. People are loving her story and sharing it all over social media. So thank you to everybody who's doing that. And hope you really enjoy that episode. Plus, we released last week a new mini-series for September in partnership with Tealbook. So the first episode is about bad data, and I'm talking to the CEO, Stephanie Lapierre. And on the first episode, which is episode 136, wherever you subscribe to Let's Talk Supply Chain or over under podcasts at letstalksupplychain.com. What else do we have this week? Well, we've got a lot of new things happening on the SC Supply Chain TV. We've got a new data den. We've got a new supply chain minute. So many amazing things happening. And this week, I'm starting to do demos on Crowdcast for Ships. So if you go onto Crowdcast and you look up Ships, SHIPZ, you want a demo, you want to take a look and see what that's all about, go and register and sign up, and I will see you there. Now we are going to bring in Audrey. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning. You know, it's a shortened week. It's a Tuesday, which I keep thinking is a Monday. And
I know.
You know, I've got a few last minute deliveries coming in the next 2 days. And once that's done, I can take a nice deep breath and let it out. So.
Awesome. Well, hopefully this week is better for you than last week, because I know you had a few challenges.
Was a bit nuts. Oh my gosh. And it's not like Mercury's in retrograde or anything, but I heard from so many people that there was all these little things were happening, or all these little annoying things. So I don't know if it was just we were kind of ready for that long weekend if you're here in North America, or I don't know, but last week was a bit.
I swear there was a full moon. I mean, I definitely.
Oh, there was definitely a full moon. Yeah, there had to be a full moon.
Well, just so everybody knows what's coming up, the last thing that I wanted to mention is actually the webinar that I'm going to be doing in partnership with Procurement Foundry, and I'm going to be talking to Suchi. So not only the CEO called Suchi, but also a couple other people from their team about what they're doing over on Suchi. I know you were listening to the panel that I did with Suchi back at Forge. What did you think about that?
It was great. The content and tips and just overall quality of the presentation was so good. So and Suchi, she just knows her stuff. She knows this side of it inside and out. And so it was just such a great listening experience. You're just like, yeah. And I started to, when you start taking notes, you're like, okay, this is good.
It's a good one. Well,
yeah, that's my barometer. I started taking notes.
So AJ has posted the link in the comments of this. We'll also post it on the post, and the link is also there. It happens September 15th at 1 p.m. So hopefully we're going to see you there because it should be a really,
Oh,
really good discussion. Our friend Sophia is here. Hello. Great Tuesday, everyone. I know it feels like Monday. I don't know. I'm so confused. But, anyways, hopefully it's a much better week for everybody than last week. I feel like everybody last week kind of had a lot of things going on. So let's get to my thoughts and coffee post before we get to our supply chain topics. I don't know if you saw this. So
I
let
saw
me
it.
premise this post because I've been sitting on this post for a little while. And on Sunday, I was like, today is the day that I'm going to post this one. But I'm going to tell you, it took me a couple of hours. Like I sat on it, I read it, I put it down, went and did other things, read it again, sent it to somebody to read to make sure that I was coming across the way that I wanted to come across in this post. I didn't want to throw anybody under the bus. I wanted to really highlight, you know, what I was going through so that other people, if they're going through, can feel like they can talk about it. And so this was a pretty personal post for me, I'll be honest.
And I don't think you meant it as like a call out to like specific people so that people would feel, you know, uncomfortable. You know, I just think it is an experience that we all go through, and I don't think it's talked about enough, right? And I think sometimes people don't realize exactly what they're doing or saying to people. Like sometimes you just don't stop and think, or you just don't care, which is even worse. But no, I mean, I applaud you because I know we've talked about this, you know, between us, and it's a tough thing to open up, you know, to the community in this way. But I mean, I think we're very lucky that in our supply chain group, in our supply chain community and procurement, and you know, in the community that you've built through Let's Talk Supply Chain, I think people are, you know, one, super supportive and caring, and two, ready to kind of tackle these things, and not just like quickly, but like with the nuance that's needed, with the depth that's needed, because these aren't simple, you know, topics. These are sort of complex issues that we go through. But
Yeah. And if anybody didn't see my post on Sunday, I've got it obviously up on the screen, but I'm talking about how there's no room for bullies. I've been bullied off and on since I was in grade 5. I could tell you a bunch of stories, and it ran into my adulthood, and it's run into the last couple of months for me. Something that I've had to tackle. I've had to, you know, it's brought up feelings from the past that I've had to deal with, and really just had to figure out how I wanted to deal with it. And so, you know, when I went to, you know, talk to them about it, and just sort of, I didn't stand up for myself in an aggressive way. You know, it was just reaching out to say, hey, how can we come to a peaceful resolution? How can we figure this out moving forward? I really want to make sure that we can have a good relationship moving forward. But it wasn't received very well. And it turned into some other things, which was unfortunate. You know, going after some of my series and then making people choose and stuff like that, which is unfortunate, but it's not really about the story. It's really about saying that this is a platform that other people can use. I'm going through it. If other people are going through it, let's use this platform to talk about it. Let's shine the light so that we're not in darkness on our own. I mean, I was dealing with it mostly on my own in the last couple of months. But I really want us to be able to talk about it. And I don't want us to be in the darkness on our own. And that it's not about throwing people under the bus. It's just talking about the experience and being able to share it and getting the support that I've seen over the last couple of days have been amazing. You know, private messages saying, you know, if you want to talk, I'm there. You know, people really coming out and saying, this is what's been happening to me as well. You know, and I'm glad that you posted it. And that's really what it's mostly been about, you know, for me. And I think what I'm going to say is that I've got a new diversity show coming up. It's going to be released in October, actually. And bullying is going to be one of the themes for one of the shows, because I think that it's really, really important in the conversation about diversity and inclusion, especially the conversation about inclusion. How are we including people? How are we not including people? What does that look like? Does that take on bullying tendencies? You know, let's talk about how that feels and what that looks like for different people. So,
I think, kind of two things. One, I think that you mentioned that it brought back up stuff from the past. I think that's key because I've always felt like that too. And you don't quite realize it. Sometimes in the moment you're like, this has made me feel like, and then you start ruminating back on like, oh, this happened when I was like, it happened, I got bullied bad in school when I was like 9, and then in high school, or then so it does kind of trigger like that series of life events for you. So that's important to remember too, because it's not just the moment that you're dealing with. It could be like this whole history of it. But two, the community being supportive, but talking about it, because there, no one there's no, like, you don't go to school for like life skills of how to have boundaries and how to not be a narcissist and how to put, like there isn't really a course. Like there's courses now, like when you're an adult, maybe with personal coaching or whatever, but most of us, like, you kind of just stumble through and you try to create these relationships. So, I mean, as long as people are really trying to come from a well-intentioned place and just be upfront and honest, but I get feedback on things, and sometimes you're like, your first response, of course, is like, excuse me, no. But it's, you have to be willing and open to taking that time to listen and learn from people, and it can be extremely uncomfortable, but I mean, that's the adventure, right? That's what we have to do to be able to have, solid, positive, wonderful relationships with people.
Yeah. And if we're going to open up the dialogue and have conversations about different things and how we can just make life easier for everybody, we need to be able to listen to all stories, and we need to create that empathy. And how do we do that? Right? What does that look like for some people? And the only way we're going to be able to move forward is really to have those conversations, seeing it from other people, the way that their perspective and things like that. So I shared it, and I'm glad that people resonated with it, and I'm hoping that we can keep this conversation moving forward with this series that we're coming out with in October. I'm super proud of it. I think that we're going to get really into the deep core of the conversations that need to happen in supply chain right now. And I'm excited because I think people are really going to like it. So anyways, I know it's a bit of a dark topic on a Tuesday morning. I mean, we're just getting ready for the week. So let's kind of turn this around and talk about some of the supply chain topics. So our first supply chain topic is not your typical supply chain topic. So I don't know about you guys. There is a podcast called Side Hustle School. I've been following it on and off for a couple of years, and I love hearing about different side hustles that people have. And this one kind of caught my eye because they're talking about global supply chain adventures. And so what happened was this guy was traveling the world. I can't remember what he was doing, but he was traveling the world, and he realized that in most places, it's very hard for them to get products from the US. And they want these products from the US. And so he used to work at I think a home delivery service or something like that. So he took his skills from there. He turned it into a business. I think it's called, what is it called? It's called USA to Everywhere. And they are basically doing a consolidation service to different parts of the globe with the products that they want to buy from within the US. So from what I gather, they're buying the products online. They're sending it to him. He's consolidating them into different shipments that are going to different locations. And that's how they're getting by all of the very expensive last mile delivery charges. What did you think about this story?
Well, it's so interesting because he's really, I mean, from the outset, he solved this pain point for people who want to order online. And like, one, there's some payment issues because certain countries paying into the US, even with a legit credit card, like that, it was a big hassle and it wasn't happening. You know, so, and then two, the whole piece of, you know, getting things delivered and the packaging was wrong. And, you know,
Yeah.
so he's kind of solving, you know, this kind of real pain point for people who just want to shop, let them shop. So
Yeah.
he's helping them with that. And, it's really interesting. Like, I mean, of course, my mind is like kind of a compliance mind, and I'm like, I hope he's filling out the paperwork correctly and what's his origin like. But leave that. It's just an exciting adventure and kind of hustling, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting was that payments were often rejected.
Mm-hmm.
So he was saying that although people have money, they were ruled out
Legit credit cards. Yeah.
based on their location, and legitimate credit
Yeah.
cards were being denied.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting and not something that I've ever really thought about in relation to supply chain. But the other thing that I thought was really cool was that USA to everywhere is 6 years, right? It's been around for 6 years. It's on
Yeah.
track to generate several million dollars in revenue for, this was back in 2018. So this is 2 years
Yeah.
ago. But even though it was on track to generate several million dollars in revenue, he was still running the business from his house, which is
He
amazing,
just
right?
looped in his relatives or something.
He
He's like, I
totally
got
did.
family members to help out. Yeah.
He totally did. So I mean, that was 2 years ago. So maybe by now he
Yeah.
has a warehouse, and he wants to expand. He says he wants to expand to all over the place. So
Yeah.
hopefully he can do that. And I thought that it was just a fun, story and something that we could talk about. But yeah, no, the Side Hustle School podcast, I think is really cool. I think there are 20-minute episodes based on people's side hustles and what people are doing. And I just thought it was cool that we had a supply chain
Yeah.
example.
That's
All
a good
right.
one.
So the next one is, I just want to make
Is
sure
it the global supply chains?
yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this one was so
Audrey is
good.
very excited about this one. So why don't you start?
Okay, so this global supply chains in a post-pandemic world. So it's put up by the Harvard Business Review, written by Willie Shih, and it goes in, like, it really goes into depth on sort of what's happened with COVID, but not so much what's happened, but things that need to you know challenges that companies need to overcome. And what I liked about it was it really went into depth. Like, it's not just like, oh yeah, you have to do this and this, or you have to, near shore, sure shore, reshore, whatever. It's like it really goes into all of the things as a supply chain manager that you're going to have to think about, the hidden risks. It talks about, identifying your vulnerabilities, but like what those might mean. So, there's a lot of obviously super experienced professionals out in the market, but then when there's people who are sort of just still learning, or there's always a chance to learn. I thought this was a great article because it really touched on all of the things that you might not think of, but you need to think of. So
Yeah, I would
definitely
agree with
worth
you.
checking it out.
Yeah, I mean, because we've been talking about, nearshoring, reshoring,
Yeah,
sureshoring,
sure,
all
shoring.
those. And then the one word that I liked from Peter Hall was glocalization,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so what I really found from this article was that they were talking about economic nationalism.
Yeah.
And so what we're not hearing right now is we are hearing about, how people are shifting their priorities. They're looking at diversifying their supplier base. They're potentially looking at manufacturing for local markets instead of manufacturing for global markets. They also talk about in this article about the just in case versus the just in time. And now
Yeah.
they're talking about, taking advantage and really thinking about safety stock and things like that. But what
Mm-hmm.
surprised me was this economic nationalism. So
Yeah.
what they're saying is that companies might be feeling the political pressure to increase domestic production and grow employment in home countries. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
not what we're hearing about. That's not what we're talking about. We're not, I mean, you might realize it. I haven't heard it.
Yeah.
But the fact that governments are getting involved,
Yes.
politics are now getting involved in our
Yes.
supply chains and where we're going to be manufacturing and
Yeah.
what that means for protecting our local economies versus, manufacturing and creating jobs in other economies. And what
Mhm.
does that mean? Excuse me. What does that mean globally? What does that mean
Yeah.
not only locally, but what does that mean
Yeah.
globally?
Mhm.
And then the other one that they were talking about was reducing the amount of SKUs. So I don't know if you've
Yeah.
heard this, but I've also heard that there's some restaurants. I think
Yeah.
IHOP is one of them because they had like a 12-page menu.
Mhm.
And they've taken their like 12-page menu down to a 2-page menu. And I'm only using that as an
What?
example because it's something that everybody can relate to. Restaurants,
Yeah.
reducing the size of their menus, but they're really talking about companies reducing the amount of SKUs that they're holding. And
Yeah.
especially if we're looking at safety stock and looking at just in case versus just in time, it really is going to put pressure on how many SKUs we're actually keeping on hand.
Yeah. It's so interesting because if you'd talk to me like in January and February, or if you talk to trend experts like last year, the trend moving, I think, into 2020 through 2025 was this kind of personalization or this customization trend,
Yeah.
which meant that companies were trying to provide a wealth of SKUs because they wanted everyone to kind of get what they wanted.
Yeah.
So now with COVID kind of pushing you to, for cost reasons, for economic reasons, for so many reasons, pushing you to sort of really be strategic about what SKUs,
Mhm.
who's buying what, really understanding what your customer's buying and what the need is in the market. What happens to customization and personalization when you start limiting what's on offer, or how can you still make it a special customized experience for your customer? I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm fascinated by this, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Janet, just so you know, I have
Oh,
just
it's
scrolled up
Willie.
here.
Yeah, Willie Shih, SHIH.
There we go. All right. So now you can look it up. We also
Willie
have
C. Shih.
the link in the comments for this, so you should be able to find it there as well.
Yeah.
Sophia says Mondelez is doing that too. No more Oreos of different flavors. No. I mean, I don't
I had a
eat
twit.
Oreos, but
I had a Twitter chat about flavored Oreos last week with like a couple of people, and they're like, because I said I had Oreos for breakfast or lunch or something dumb, because lunch of champions for Audrey is like 4 Oreos and a coffee. And the one of the guys is like, I hope they're not flavored. No, it's like 2 of them were cinnamon bun. So
oh, well, you're not
I
gonna get
love cinnamon bun Oreos.
you're not gonna be able to get that anymore. On another note and totally random,
No.
I actually tweeted, I think it was yesterday, because we were driving and I heard on the radio that there was a study that came out and people who went camping actually ordered food online to get delivered to a campsite. And it
What, like
totally
a pizza?
I was like, people go
Like
camp
Uber Eats?
like, well, they were talking about skip the dishes because it's in Canada,
Oh,
but
okay.
same thing, right? I was like, so people actually go camping and then they
Yeah,
order food online to get delivered to the campsite. Imagine being that delivery driver,
that's nuts. Like you don't just get a hot dog and a stick and like some KD? Like
right?
what?
I mean, I thought that was the whole point. I don't camp, okay? I am not a
That's true.
camper. I don't
I am a
camp.
camper.
I have a campsite for the afternoon on Friday. I don't stay overnight. I don't camp. But for the people that do camp in my life that
Yeah,
have told me about the joys of camping, they've told me that
yeah,
they like cooking over an open fire, and that's kind of
yeah,
fun about camping and all that. So when I heard that people are ordering food online to the campsite, totally
yeah.
blew my mind, and I felt like I had to tweet about
Well,
this.
maybe this makes it a broader experience. Maybe that's what, like, there's been all these people sitting at home, like, I really want to go camping, but the whole fire cooking, hot dogs, tacos in a bag, I am just not here for it. And so now with the pandemic, it's like, because you're like, life's too short, I'm just going to do what I want. They've just come up with this whole avenue of like, I would have gone camping except for the food. And it's like, skip, here you go. Now I'm going camping because I can order it.
That's so amazing. I love it. I love it. I think it's absolutely
Brave
amazing.
new world.
All right. So now we get to our third supply chain topic.
Yeah. Which is
Which
a bit like,
Yeah, which is a really,
yeah,
really interesting article. So this is a
yes.
clothing company or a retail company in the UK. And they've decided to do this big announcement that they're going to do an independent review, but this is only after they've been caught.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's commendable that they're going to throw the 10 million into, this supply chain audit. However, if they had maybe used the money ahead of time and paid their employees properly and to the amount that they should be paid, if you've got the
a
10
newspaper wouldn't have done an article.
Paying our employees properly.
Right.
I'm just saying. Anyways, I guess we should tell people what this article is about, because what they were saying is Boohoo has launched. Oh no, it said that one of their suppliers' factories were paying as little as £3.50, which is $4.37 an hour.
Yeah.
And so now they've launched this. You can read this article. We're going to have the links in comments. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of comments on this, because mine was kind of like, if you've got that kind of money, why didn't you pay the people properly in the first place? I mean, I don't know about you, but that's kind of where I'm at.
If you're running a business, you've got to factor in paying people appropriately. And people who are paid appropriately and have a great work culture work better. They're more productive and effective. It just, all the data is there. You see these companies crop up, and it's like they've kind of cheaped out. And you're like, you guys, you've got to stop doing this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so, it was a little, I mean, it's kind of interesting to see that retail companies are coming to the forefront and saying, hey, we're going to do this audit right now. It's something really important to us, but it's only after we've been caught out, because apparently there was a big article the week before about how they weren't paying their employees properly.
Yeah. But they also kind of try to blame it on it was a sub factory or a partner or whatever. And I do a lot of supply chain with multiple partners and multiple vendors. You have to check the whole thing out. You can't you can't stop here. Your supply chain is a gazillion pieces long. You can't just look at one piece, right? And you are, in this day and age, you are responsible for the person 5 factories down the road or 5 partners down. That's still part of, if you want to have, a strong CSR or corporate social responsibility, you have to be investigating this stuff. And there's lots of tools and ways to do that. So
it's
disappointing.
It's really with anything that you're doing, right? Any contractors that you're hiring, any suppliers that you're working with, and just making sure that everybody is getting a fair wage. Because, it might work for a time, but it's not going to work forever, especially in these days. Right? People have access to social media. People have access to a community at their fingertips. And, if you're not doing the right thing, people are going to know.
We're going to know. Yeah. We're like.
And you can't hide that anymore.
No.
Right?
And I think people don't realize either that this happened in the UK. This is in the UK. The company, the manufacturer, the workers are in the UK. And there was a case, I think, just in Los Angeles last month. Time is a horrible construct, but last month, I think, out of Los Angeles, again, not paying workers. It happens here in Toronto. It happens in New York City. It's not it's over there somewhere else where they don't have labor standards or rules. It's no. It happens where there are labor standards and where there are rules. And usually these workers are, they could be new to the country. They could be, they don't have a strong education. So they don't know how to protect themselves, and so this is definitely a case of being exploited, and that's sad. Why do that as a business, right? You can do better.
Yeah. Okay, well, before we go, I know we can't show the comments of the people on my personal LinkedIn page, but I want to give a shout out because Samuel from Panama, Barb Sexton says, ha, that's serious glamping. I know, right? Ordering food online to your campsite. I mean, sheesh. Susan Walsh says, afternoon, ladies. Juan says, do you apply AI in this moment for logistics process? And that was probably based on the second article.
The global supply chain. Yeah.
One, I encourage you, I'll be adding the links to the post that you're on right now, because it does talk about AI and it does talk about how, because we're looking at bringing some of those processes locally, that they're also going to be taken over by technology to keep the cost down. Because what they're also saying is that consumers will not pay more for the product. And so companies are going to have to find a way, if they are going to manufacture locally, to bring down that cost so they can do that. And then last but not least, Caroline Whitley, my friend over in the UK, we were just talking about your beloved country. It's unfortunately all too common in the business world when ambition or strong leadership crosses the line into bullying. Kudos for shining the light on such an overlooked problem. And that has to do with what we were talking about from a bullying standpoint. Anyway, guys, it's 10:30. Thoughts and coffee for this week over. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned because this week we've got a lot going on. Next week, who's coming on? Daniel Barnes, all the way from the UK. He's going to be coming on and joining me next week. So we'll see you then, and we hope you have a great week.
Yay.